Hey everybody, David Costello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today's guest is Brian Clare. He is the co-founder and CEO of Blueprint Accounting. He's also the not-so-hidden Zapier guru in the accounting space. I was telling him right before the show, I went out into a couple different Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups. I said, hey, Zapier-wise, automation-wise, who should I talk to? And they said, Brian. I said, okay, goodness gracious, I got to have Brian on the show. So with all that to say, Brian, welcome to the Growing Your Firm podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, David. Awesome to be here. I've heard obviously a lot about your podcast and listened to it a few times. Definitely gonna have to listen to it more, and especially once this one comes out.
Yeah. Well, before we dive into the world of automation and how you think about putting together different automation steps, and we're going to talk a lot about Zapier, what it is, how it can help, how you can piece it together, when you should and should not use it. But tell us a little bit about Blueprint. What do you guys do and what makes you unique and different?
Yeah, so Blueprint, we're out of Ottawa, Ontario, and we provide bookkeeping, virtual CFO, controller type role, that sort of work. I've started to learn about Zapier a lot, so we do offer that as a service. It's not really advertised, but it is something that we can do for sure. And obviously, with that comes sort of the automation, piecing apps together, figuring out a workflow with a client, and kind of seeing where we can plug things together and make it work more efficiently for them.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into Zapier and automation, but I have to ask, because so many people have now found themselves in kind of a remote work environment. You guys have been in it for a little bit. What do you think is the number one challenge to the remote work environment and how to overcome it?
Probably communication, to be honest. So when you're in an office, obviously you can just walk down the hall, tap someone on the shoulder, have a conversation, right? With being remote, it's a little more difficult. Obviously there's apps like Slack, Teams, those sorts of things, and then obviously Zoom for video chat, but you need to make a better effort towards that, right? Be more involved in the communication, and even just have, daily meetings with your team, even if it's just a quick kind of water cooler chat, right? But again, you're not right next to the person or down the hall, so it's a lot more difficult to do that.
Yeah, and real quick, I know we want to get into Zapier, but I'm also curious in this because, look, Jetpack's gone all remote now, and we've been a very remote-minded company, but we have an office, and I'm used to seeing people in person, and I realized that to be a lot more intentional about putting communications out there, shooting videos, sending out emails. This daily meeting you're talking about, give us a quick agenda of what that looks like, or if it's weekly or what have you.
So we do agendas for bi-weekly team meetings. We also do bi-weekly lunch and learns. They're kind of offsetting weeks, so it's we're always seeing each other every week anyways, but
oh cool,
they're more like offhand, check in with the team, how's it going, what's new, how's the day going. Doesn't have to be about business, just more personal conversations, see what's going on in their life, that sort of thing. And that gets the flow going of learning about your team, obviously learning more about each other. Whereas like an office location, like I said, you can just walk down and have that conversation with someone right away.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And it's so amazing. I think we're going to be in an interesting world in which you start becoming very intentional and proactive about having these conversations. You might find yourself, if you used to be offline, now you're online 24/7, learning more about people because you're just constantly thinking about how to put in new constructs and communication touch points. So
yeah.
Really good note. I couldn't start this interview without asking that. But look, you're the king of Zapier, right? That's kind of your unofficial title. You know it. If you're an accountant, if you're an accounting firm, you start thinking about Zapier, your name eventually shows up. So what is Zapier, and why is it important for accounting firms?
So Zapier is a tool that you can use to link apps together that couldn't otherwise be directly integrated. Right, so it works in a sort of if this, then that fashion. And why accounts should use it is because if there are apps that don't talk to each other, now they can.
Yeah, that's such a good way to put it. And there's like, what, 1,800, 2,000 apps at this point?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Depending on when you're listening to this, by the way. And look, I don't show up to the office anymore, so engineers can't kick me in the shin for saying this. We're working on a Zapier integration. If you're listening to it, it's probably already live. Nice. So we're really passionate about the tool. It's something we've been using internally. What's, to help people wrap their minds around it, when does a Zapier spark come to mind? Like when you're working on something, or maybe give us an example of a flow, a simple one you put together, and we can start maybe working our way up to simple, to immediate, to advanced, just to show everything that could be accomplished inside of this connector.
Yeah. I mean, the simplest ones are always the repeatable tasks, right? So it could be something like a reminder that you're sending to yourself. It could be something like, I'm going to say this, I use Asana. Sorry, we're not on Jetpack.
No, I mean, look, goodness gracious of, yeah, by all means.
Yeah.
Use an Asana until you can, and then when it breaks, we're here. That's how I look at Asana. So
yeah, perfect. So I have one set up for myself where a teammate messages me, and if I can't answer right away, I start the message in Slack, and it creates a task in Asana. Right, something simple like that. That's a one-step zap.
I love that. Man, I mean, we're gonna almost have to like re-engage to create a cookbook of Jetpack and Zapier plus other things, because I didn't even think of that. I think that's the wonderful thing about Zapier. You can be endlessly creative about how to make different connections. Have you created some sort of like automation mindset where anytime you do something that's tedious, you're like, I'm gonna go into Zapier?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I'm always looking for ways that I can automate any task. Right? Because if I can automate it, then I can focus on other high value tasks, right? For my clients or even within my business. So yeah, I think maybe that's the mindset. Just if you see something, kind of think about what apps you're using within that workflow, and then figure out how they can plug together, what information you're taking from one, how you want to pass it on to the other, and then see where Zapier can plug in to help you automate that.
Yeah. Well, let's say I want to freak you out a little bit, Brian. Let's say Zapier went away. They decided, you know what, we're kind of tired of it. What are the top, I don't know, 5 automations that you would miss the most?
Definitely my onboarding Zap. I had it previously up to about 62 steps. So there's a lot of things that are getting automated there for me in the back office. We've since pared it down a bit just because we reduced some of our services. That's a whole other conversation. But so that one definitely, because there's so many tasks that are repeatable in the onboarding process. Like sending a welcome email, right? You're probably going to send the same thing to every client. Hey, welcome. We're excited to have you on board. These sorts of things.
So something like when a proposal was signed, send this email.
Yep. Yeah, okay. Exactly. Like creating folders, right? We set up the same folders for every client that we sign. So why can't I automate that?
Amazing. So I want to pick that one apart, and we'll go into 4 other ones that you can't live without. But
yeah.
So proposal gets signed. You have a Zap where an email gets sent out. A client folder gets created. What else is happening in this magical multi-dozen step onboarding?
So depending on the service that gets accepted, it goes down a different path. If you're familiar with paths in Zapier, we do some stuff in Active Campaign. So they get added to specific lists. They get their contact updated. The deal gets updated in Active Campaign. They get added to a drip campaign automatically into Active Campaign, because then we have 3 or 4 or 5 emails that get sent out over about a week, I think it is.
What are those emails? So these are onboarding emails. What's the nature of these emails, by the way? What are they saying? What are they communicating to the client?
It's mostly like, well, number one is the welcome email. Then we just kind of outline at a high level in that email what's going to happen over the next week, some things that they should expect, some things that we need from them and that they may need from us. So it could be things like, can you fill out this type form survey so we can gather some more information about you? Could be, we use Receipt Bank with all of our clients. So it could be, fill in this Receipt Bank survey so that we know who to add to Receipt Bank, right? And then it culminates with, the last request is book that onboarding meeting. Right. So
I love it. So you have the type form, you get that's your client intake form that gets fed into your CRM, workflow, project, task management, wherever you're housing client information. The scheduling tool, booking that is through Zapier. I don't know if you schedule one through Calendly or Acuity or Calendly. Yeah.
Yep.
And then the interesting thing is, I don't know if you use Zoom or something else, but then you could probably auto insert Zoom links into the calendar schedule.
Yeah,
right? So,
exactly. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I think the interesting thing, just to peel back before we go into the other four, I mean, roughly speaking, how many software applications do you use? 20, 30, 40? I don't know.
Yeah, probably upwards of 40.
Yeah. I mean, I think, what you're finding is that, highly scalable, highly profitable firms are, I mean, leveraging technology to get more done with less. I mean, if you didn't have Zapier and you didn't have these 40 tools, I don't know what you would do
Oh
from a
God.
headcount perspective, right?
Don't ruin my day and make me think about that.
You might have to hire 6 more people.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's like, if you're a firm, and we'll link it up. One of the firms that works with us, Summit CPA, they published their technology stack. They have this wonderful PDF, and they showed like the 40 tools that they use. And so what I would recommend for anybody listening is just jot down your 10, 20 tools that you could just think off the top of your head, right? Your Jetpack, your Calendly, your Typeform, your Receipt Bank, whatever, or Sauna, right? Whatever you use, write it all down. And then 9 times out of 10, just probably going to be in Zapier. And if it's not in Zapier, people are probably hammering them to get into Zapier, right? So
totally. Yeah.
So, okay. So we have client onboarding. That would break your heart. What's the second thing that would break your heart if Zapier went away?
Probably client reminders.
Ooh, okay. Let's unpack client reminders, because this is a painful one, if you don't have it set up. So
yeah,
how does that work for you?
So we have a few reminders that we send out. One is requesting clients to submit bank statements. So sometimes they're on HubDoc, sometimes they're not. But the ones that are not, we actually need them to submit those bank statements. So on a monthly basis, we send out that reminder. It gets automatically created in ActiveCampaign as a campaign, and it'll email out to the correct people. And then we have.
And is that tied into your task management tool, or no? That's just between Zapier and ActiveCampaign.
Yeah, just between Zapier and ActiveCampaign. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. And the Zap says on the 5th of every month, trigger this message to be sent from ActiveCampaign or something like that?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So the two other ones are similar. So client requests to submit receipts, right? Same thing. So we send that out just before the month ends. Please submit your receipts for month end, just to make sure we can get your financials to you at the right time, right?
Yes. Yes. Was there one more reminder?
Yep. And then we have a client specific one, because they have a different deadline for the month. So we kind of specialize it if it's based on a certain client.
And so Zapier, the way this works with Zapier and ActiveCampaign is you during your onboarding process, you have a intake form through Typeform. People fill it out. They get added as a contact into ActiveCampaign.
Mm-hmm.
Do you tag them with something special, or do all your clients get the 5th, submit your stuff at the end of every month kind of reminder? It's just like pull from this list inside of this tool.
Yeah.
And then the email gets sent out. And is it through your inbox, through your Google account or something like that, this reminder gets sent, or it gets sent through the ActiveCampaign like newsletter software?
So it does send through ActiveCampaign, but it looks like it's coming from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if they reply, I mean, here's the secret too. It's like, you should queue it up if you're using ActiveCampaign or MailChimp or whatever. Yeah, queue it up like a personal email, because when somebody replies, I'm assuming it goes to your inbox anyways.
Yep, exactly.
And by the way, what does this email say? Like, be sure to submit your stuff. Here's the link to your HubDoc, or is it just be sure to submit your stuff?
It's more like be sure to submit your stuff. Go log into ShareFile, because we use ShareFile for cloud storage, right? So here's the link to our ShareFile. Log in, drop it in your folder.
Perfect. Prior to you doing that, like what I mean, obviously you had to do all the manual entry or manual typing to get that out. Have you seen clients like increase their, for lack of a better word, adherence to submitting the stuff on time? Some months.
Yes, some here, some there. Some you need like another extra poke or a phone call, but for the most part, at least with ActiveCampaign, I can see that they're actually clicking on a link or they're opening the email. And if they're not, then I can follow up with them and make sure that they're actually following the request that we made, right?
Yeah. Well, could you conceivably create a Zap where it's like, if they read but not click? I don't know if ActiveCampaign, I don't know if any tool.
Yeah, I think you could.
You could, like, if they've opened the email but not clicked the link,
resend the email.
Yeah. Oh, in ActiveCampaign, you can definitely do that.
Yeah.
The automation. That's probably the best way to do it. I was thinking of a worse way to do it, which is then create a task or
More
job.
zaps, more zaps.
Well, I was
You
thinking
know?
of it as creating a task to call them or something, but it probably makes sense to do an email nudge, um, depending on the client, of course. I don't know if you want to give different service options to different clients, but
Mhm.
I think client reminders, perfect sense.
Yeah.
Active Campaign, I'm assuming MailChimp could do it as well. It's free,
Yeah.
although they might charge you to do that automation to do some follow-up stuff in MailChimp.
Yeah, I
All
think
right,
they
so
do now.
yeah, so that's the second one that would make you cry if it went away. What's the third one? Do you have a third one?
Yeah, probably our like metric management. So we have a bunch of
Ooh,
zaps going on
okay.
in the background where it's grabbing information from like our QuickBooks, some active campaign data, throwing it into either like a Google Sheet or an Excel spreadsheet, and that way we can just crunch data quickly at the end of the month when we do our own reporting.
That sounds amazing. So unpack this report. What are you looking at?
So it's obviously like MRR, project revenue, these things we can grab from QBO, but there's some details that we also grab from those invoices to make sure we're understanding what's going on with that with the revenue there. With active campaign, it's generally around like opportunities and deals and like close percentages, these sorts of things. So that all gets fed into these worksheets, which then we load into Fathoms, our reporting software, and then do our reporting from there.
All right. So in this report, just to get, super operational for a second, you're looking at pipeline close one percentage. It sounds like you're looking at project profitability. Is that
Yeah, yeah.
are those the two main ones? Is there anything else in kind of your Fathom dashboard?
We have, let me think. We have some headcount stuff. So just like revenue per headcount, MRR per headcount, per ops employee, that sort of thing.
So are you pulling both revenue and headcount from QBO?
No. So we pull revenue from QBO. Headcount we just load manually because we don't have any payroll software that can integrate with any other software, I guess. Uh, yeah. So we
Interesting.
just
Hint, hint to every payroll provider. This is
yeah.
Brian's not so subtle nudge to, if you're a payroll company and listening to this, which you probably won't listen to this, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, email Brian to talk about integrations.
I think it's mostly just the Canadian ones. The US ones have a lot more integrations with apps, but yeah, the Canadian ones, come on, guys, get on board here.
All right, all right. Come on. Gusto, if you're listening, give Brian a call. QBO, if you're listening, Zero, if you're listening. Who else does payroll? I don't know. Anyways, hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
Mm-hmm.
Tell you what, though, if once they solve that, if Gusto goes up to Canada or QBO, whatever, they'll probably come back and sponsor this show. Anyway,
There you go.
all right, cool. So is our fourth and fifth one that comes to mind? I mean, and by the way, people listening, right? This is a super nitty gritty tactical. How do you automate things? But what I hope to get out of this interview is just the mindset that you can apply to getting this on. And by the way, goodness gracious, it looks like our power went out, which means all of our recording just went out. No, right.
A little frozen there, I guess.
Yeah, and it's still recording. So, like, by the way, that
Nice.
has never happened. So we're on like I don't know,
Oh,
episode 140, 150. So Brian, you're the lucky guest
there we
that
go.
there's. And look, I'm usually in the office, not at home. But our power just went out, which
Oh,
during a time where everybody's quarantined freaks you out for a little bit. So we're back.
yeah.
And I'm glad it was only for 30 seconds. Um, Anywho, cool. But the point I was trying to make, and I don't know where I cut off, but like we're getting nitty gritty about how to set up different zaps, different automations in your firm. And the reason we're going so deep is I want to instill the mindset for all the listeners of what's possible in your firm
Mhm.
to put together. And I'm going through these five, and I think we have one more to get through, maybe two more. I forget where we left off before all power went out inside of this little home office here. Is to think about the first steps you can take to kind of going into this world. So anyways, Brian, I can't recall if we left off on the fourth one or the fifth one.
I think it was the fourth.
I think it was the fourth. So what's the
Yeah.
fourth one you can't live without?
I have a couple client-specific zaps.
And what do they do? Are they reminders?
No, so they're the two that I'm looking at right now. They're mostly around USD invoices because in Canada there's a little bit of an issue with multi-currency. So I've set up some zaps just to grab USD invoices that come in and kind of notify me and my team to go in and update those when we need to.
And what's being triggered? So something comes into QBO, and if it says like currency is USD,
Yeah.
send an email, note, task, Slack message to you or something?
Yeah, exactly. So like, because we're on Slack, we have a channel for every single client. It'll basically, an invoice comes into QBO. That's what these clients are on. And then it'll kind of look for that Slack channel based on the client name, send a notification to the team member and say, go review this invoice. Something has to happen to it. We need to update some data on it, that sort of thing.
Awesome. All right. Final one, fifth one. And Brian, thanks for being a great sport here, because going to this interview, you didn't know I was going to ask you the top 5. This is a little bit like
no, I didn't.
This is a little bit like jazz today. We're just free flowing, and the power may or may not be on today. We don't know. So kind of a different type of interview. But what's the fifth one to round things out with today's Zapier automation kind of dive? All right. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to be editing this interview. Goodness gracious, we're in a whole new world. All right.
Amazing.
Cool. What's your fifth one before who knows what else happens?
Yeah. So I was saying, do you carry on business cards?
Do I have business cards? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So I don't carry around business cards. So I've actually set up a Zap where someone fills in a type form. It takes all that information, puts it into ActiveCampaign as a contact, and then it sends them an email with all of my information automatically. So then I have it everywhere that I need. They have the information that they need from me, and I'm not kind of coming home and saying, "Oh, what did I talk to David about again?" Type, put together that email and send it off.
I got you. I thought you said business credit cards.
Oh, no. Business like a business
cards?
Yes, a business card, yes.
Look, this is my personal thing. People have business cards, more power to you.
Yeah.
I cannot stand business cards.
I know, I can't either.
I get them, and so this is what I do. I should probably set up a Zap like you. I say, look, what's your email? Let me email you, because all my contacts information is in my signature. Yeah. So I just do the email thing, right? I like the form idea. Business cards to me, I mean, somebody, the move of you sit down with somebody, you pull out a business card, hand it over to them. 9 times out of 10, I'm like, I emailed you to show up to this meeting. I already have all the information you just gave me on the card. Like, I don't want your card. Like, I just throw it away. So look, it's just me. If you have business card, amazing. So what is this? So you meet somebody in person. Mm-hmm. They say, hey, do you have a card? What do you say? Go to www.blueprintaccounting.com/meet-me and it opens up the form, or what?
So I actually hand them my cell phone. Which is extremely against the norm, I would say, because most people treat their cell phone as their baby, right? They don't let it leave their pocket or their hand. Yeah. So I'm like disarming them almost by handing over my cell phone and letting them play around with it, essentially, right?
Yeah. As a side note, that could be your future business card. Is just hand out iPhones.
There we go.
It'll be very unique. Everybody would always remember you. Look, I programmed one contact into this iPhone. It's my information. That's the way you remember me. Anyways.
You get an iPhone. You get an iPhone.
Yeah. So look, if somebody's opening up Zapier, wants to learn more, wants to get into it, what's the best way for them to kind of start uncovering this whole universe of how to connect together all these different apps? You've obviously given a lot of talks on the topic. So what do you think is the best way to start advancing your knowledge of Zapier?
Probably like top 2 things that I would say are go to the help section. They have probably one of the best help sections I've seen from any app. You can type in like Google, Gmail, G Suite, Microsoft 365, and it'll bring up a ton of articles about all these apps. And
Okay.
then the other one is, they changed the layout here, Explore. So they have a section called Explore. You can literally pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many apps you want, and it'll give you suggestions on how you can link them together. And then you can also see all the triggers, actions, and searches related to those apps.
I love that. Nobody's ever talked about that section yet on the show. Explore. That sounds amazing. So if you're a firm owner, you have half a dozen apps you use all the time, you can go to Explore, type them in. It'll start showing you different zaps and automations you could put together.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Brian, I really appreciate you taking the time today. If somebody wants to reach out, say thank you, learn more about this wild episode where we had power crashes happen 3 times in a row somehow, I don't know. What's the best way for them to connect with you?
Let's say on Twitter. I don't want to give out my email, but let's say on Twitter, it's at Blueprint Brian.
Awesome. And you've given a lot of talks on, I think, on Zapier and automation. So we'll link up. You have one for Intuit. I think there's a couple of YouTube videos about piecing things together. We'll link that up in the show notes. So if you're outside jogging, running, hopping, skipping, maybe you're doing a home renovation project, which I think a lot of people are doing right now in this kind of quarantine mode where everybody's trying to fix up their houses now. Maybe you're doing that and you're listening to this podcast. You couldn't write everything down. You couldn't write down the 5 zaps Brian couldn't live without. Always go to jetpackworkflow.com/blog, jetpackworkflow.com/blog. We're going to do a full write-up. We're going to link to a lot of Brian's trainings and articles about Zapier. And Brian, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Final note, right at the end. Look, if somebody listened to this interview and you liked this, you were like, oh, Brian at Zapier, it was amazing. You opened up my eyes to these 5 zaps. Share this with a colleague that needs to think about automation and think about Zapier. Show them these ideas about Zapier. So just share it with a friend that comes to mind. And Brian, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.